So there's been some general turmoil here in the United States. Some general uncertainty, if you will, mainly because of Trump's second presidency, or at least the start of his second presidency. I know that in the news there have been a lot of talk about tariffs, a lot of talk about immigration, legal and illegal, as well as there's been a lot of disrespect towards the judiciary. Also, Trump is very unpopular. He currently has about a -5, -6 net approval rating. That means that more people disapprove of his handling of the country, of his presidency, than approve of it. And there have been a lot of protests in this country. But these protests also will involve Elon Musk. They will involve other people within his administration as well. Most of these protests happen every Saturday. I know the protest groups also do other days of protests, but I mean, Saturday's the big one because, most people are working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So, the protest is going to have a little more people on the day that most people aren't working. Now, that being said, as well, even though they're on every Saturday, they do vary in size. Typically, they vary in size depending on kind of what's going on in the news. If there's a lot more divisive stuff coming from the Trump administration, in general, there's going to be a lot more protesters at these events. Going into the June 14th, which is the day that I will be talking about, the protest that I will be addressing in this video, there were three main events that I think really got the anti-Trump people to come out on this day. Number one is that it was Trump's birthday on June 14th, Saturday, June 14th. It was his 79th birthday, which, side note, no matter what your politics are, we really need to get people above the age of like 65. If our retirement age for Social Security is like 68 or 69 or whatever it is, yeah, that's the highest age a politician should be. That being said, Trump is now 79 years old. He is one of the oldest, if not, I believe, the oldest elected president. He actually got that title back in 2016. Then Joe Biden got that title, and then Donald Trump got it back again. It's been a very unfun 8 to 12 years, hasn't it been? The second big reason was that there was a military parade being put on in the Capitol in Washington, D.C. This is to commemorate the military's 250th year anniversary back in June 14th of 1775. So 250 years later, that's that anniversary. It's on the same day, his birthday and the military parade, so a lot of people were just simply saying, hey, this parade, military parade, is just to go on for his birthday. And while I understand the gall to want to say that, it was explicitly written as a 250th military parade. The third reason is there was a lot of news, specifically a lot of video clips of the government agency ICE using a lot of aggressive tactics. They definitely were rounding up people who are verifiably American citizens. Whether or not they're keeping them in cages or not is not really the point of this video, but they are definitely going way above their authority to actually detain Americans for basically reasons. So, there's a lot of people who were pretty pissed at that, so they decided to come out on June 14th to protest. As well, one thing I forgot to add actually was another reason why this kind of all came together was Donald Trump had posted on Twitter a specific tweet where he is dressed up as like a king, like he has a king's crown, and it says like the King of New York or something like that. And he's trying to say no congestion pricing or whatever. That's a whole other video to kind of go into, but the whole point is that we're a country that was founded off of basically giving the middle finger to a king and saying we don't want any kings. And the fact that he posted a photo of him on either his own social media or the White House's official like Twitter or whatever, it was just disgusting and frankly very un-American to look at this. The No Kings Day was a single-day event that was held and put together as a way to protest Trump and his administration, specifically for those reasons that I mentioned earlier. It's like a resource website, more or less, to get people to go protest legally, to go protest safely. I think this website, if I remember kind of perusing through the how to protest pamphlet that they had. This whole No Kings protest also had partner organizations that helped motivate people to come out and protest. This includes the Bernie Sanders campaign, the ACLU, Greenpeace, the Human Rights Campaign, as well as the main 5051 nationwide campaign that organizes protests against Trump. It's just another sort of resource website that basically gets a lot of grassroots organizations together to say, hey, let's all meet on this one day. And these organizations exist amongst probably another 180 other progressive and liberal organizations throughout the country. Similar to the protests happening nationwide, the same protests were happening here locally in Wichita, Kansas. The main point of this video is to kind of go over a bunch of the stuff that I saw, a bunch of the kind of protests, signs, a bunch of the actual protesters, like what did they look like, what was the general vibe of it, and just kind of give you guys a little information. You know, if you're someone who is interested in this, but you've never been to one, go ahead and do it. It's your American right to go and assemble and go protest. If you feel that you're stressed about political stuff, go do it. Absolutely go do it. So if you don't know, Kansas is a relatively Republican/conservative right-wing state. We're not the most Republican or conservative, but we are leaning that way. You know, we are, generally speaking, in the Republican camp. Culturally speaking, I mean, you know, when you think about Kansas, you probably will think about farming. I know farmers are, culturally speaking, are a very Republican-heavy demographic, you know, and so if your idea of what Kansas is a bunch of wheat farmers, a bunch of corn and sorghum farmers, then you're going to think of Kansas as a very culturally and politically Republican and conservative area. But Wichita, being one of the state's two major urban areas, is going to be much less so. The main inner parts of the city, you're going to actually get a far higher concentration of people who oppose Trump or Republicans or just their policies in general. You're going to get a higher concentration of Democrats as well. The specific location that the protest decided to do was downtown. It's at the intersection of Douglas and Broadway. Look around the area, you'll see the Ruffin Building, Kansas Leadership Center, the AC Hotel, and Ambassador Hotel, amongst several other buildings. The time that was advertised for the protest was 12 p.m. with basically no end. So whenever the protesters decided to go. The area is highly urbanized, and basically the only area you can protest is on the street corners or on the sidewalks. So the protest got really big, and usually when it does get big, it starts to spill over. On June 13th, the night before the protest, Kansas Governor Laura Kelly had sent out an official statement that she was going to give local law enforcement any state-level resources to keep these events civil. Wichita police, the day of, had barricaded west of Market Street along Douglas to help guide traffic from the car show that was also happening at Century 2 the same day. There were multiple police cars and bike cops that were policing the protest to make sure nothing was going to happen, which, let's be honest, it's Wichita, Kansas. You're not going to get a huge crowd of people who are like vehemently anti-police. There were actually a lot of older protests there, and a lot of older protesters explicitly went out of their way to thank the police officers that were there. So if you get this idea that these protesters are filled with like anti-police zealots, you're wrong. So how do I come in this story? I live 1 block away from the protest, so I can actually hear them basically every Saturday. They don't bother me really because it's like Saturday at 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock typically, so I'm like, it's just 2 hours. It's not like I'm taking a nap or I don't have a child. Like, I'm just a single guy that lives with my 2 kitty cats. There's no need for me to be annoyed by like 2 hours of noise outside in a major urban city. I wanted to make this video to document the event. If you want to start a flame war, go right ahead. The comments are free and open for you guys to start doing that. If you want to waste your life and, go right ahead. But hey, while you're down there, if you want to go ahead and not leave a hateful comment and like the video and subscribe, maybe I'll do some other videos and other fun topics and stuff going on around Wichita. So leading up to the event, I had been reading the national news. I saw a lot of advertisements on social media. I had talked to some coworkers and friends about if they were going to go down in the protest or not. I decided beforehand I was actually going to go and document this, so I decided to get my dad's drone as well as my camera, see if I can get some kind of more original looking footage and some kind of other cool stuff. It's most of that stuff is going to be overlaid throughout this video, so hopefully you're not going to be looking at my ugly face for the whole time. On the day of the event, there was a major storm that was happening. It was so bad that even someone on Reddit was like, "Hey guys, are we still protesting?" And someone commented back, was like, "It ain't a protest if it gets stopped by the weather." The storm had passed by 11:30 a.m. and the event started at 12, so most people were like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna go protest." I gotta say, because it was gonna be rainy, and that probably cooled down the weather. I think it was in the mid 80s as opposed to like the upper 90s, which it had been the previous week. So for the protesters who were out there, it was a much better experience for them. I decided to cater to some of my friends that were coming to the protest because, again, I live right in the area. I was like, "Hey, why don't you come on up and we'll eat some lunch or something?" So I walked to the nearby Papa John's, got some pizza, came back, and by the time it was 11:40, again, 20 minutes before it officially started, there was already a crowd of like 300 people that had congregated at Douglas and Broadway. And I was like, yep, this was a very good idea to get my dad's drone and to get my camera and get it all ready and set up. So I got back to my apartment. I got my friends into my apartment. We started eating some pizza. We got the camera set up. They went out to go do some protests, and I went out to take some photos and videos. I took some drone footage from about 12:25 to 12:35. That was the kind of the peak of the protests that were happening. I know some people in the comments of both Reddit and I think one YouTube comment talked about the crowd size, which we'll get to that in a second. When I was done with the drone footage, I posted it to YouTube and Reddit, went downstairs with my camera and took some photos of the protesters on the ground. But like I said, before we get into those photos and some of my favorites, let's discuss the crowd size, because apparently that's a topic of discussion or argumentation for some reason. I decided I was going to use some of my aerial photos that I took with the drone to get an idea of the crowd size, at least in a given moment. Stick with me here while I do some math. So if you look at the photo right here in front of you, each circle represents around 20 people, 20 protesters. If we add up all the circles from this area, from kind of like this angle, we get roughly 900 protesters. If we take another angle, that gets us about another 400 protesters, and these two photos together are basically the whole south side of Douglas. And again, because I was on the street, I can tell you that the north side of Douglas had basically the same amount of people as the south side did. So if we're going to assume that 1,300 people, 900 plus 400, is on the south side, then on the north side, that's another 1,300 people. We add those two numbers together, we get 2,600. Now, is that the number of attendees / protesters at this event? No, because that would just be too easy. If going more into it, this whole event was like a 6-hour-long ordeal. So, from like 11:30 to 5:30. If a protester wasn't there for the whole time, like let's say a protester was there from 11:30 to 1:30, but then they left. But then another protester came in from 1:30 to 3:30, and then they left. And then another protester, so on and so forth. Turnover rate actually multiplies the amount of attendees that were going to be there. So let's just say a turnover rate of 3. If we take that, then we get approximately an attendance of 7,800 protesters. On top of that, there were also people who wanted to protest, but because maybe they had other events to go to, or maybe because they're disabled, elderly, I should say, they don't physically have the ability to go out and protest. They do have the ability to drive by with their cars and honk. If we add those up together, I want to say we would get at least 8,500 to 9,000 people. I mean, we got to assume a good 1,000 or so cars are going to be coming in, and they are directly in favor of these protesters. They are pretty much protesters themselves. It's just they might not physically or have the time to go out and do these protests. So this is the first one that I took. It is of the American flag. It is a crisp as image of the American flag. Sorry, I know I swore, but like, you gotta say crisp as like, that is such a good looking American flag. Easily top 3 flags of all time. Easily, hands down. You know, it's you get Market Street right there. You get some other protest signs. I just thought it was a great photo. I'm gonna honest to God, get this blown up, put on my wall, because it's just that good. Second photo, this is another good photo. It's taken, you know, as you can see, the AC Hotel in the background. You got the, I think that's the transgender, pride flag, or the transgender, or the LGBT, one of the LGBTQ flags. You got some more signs there. Kind of looking at those no kings signs. So I guess those are kind of the more actual official no kings signs, right? As you can see, there's a cross out of the crowns right there. And then if you can see there in the back, you can see also the Ambassador Hotel. You can see that's the intersection of Broadway and Douglas. You know, there's more no king signs that were put out. On the crowd, I know that, you know, kind of zooming in, we do have, you know, no dictator. We have ICE equals SS. That's the Nazi secret police that was being used. Funny enough, actually, I know this battle for democracy. This is actually, I believe this is the Rage Against the Machine. This is like referencing Rage Against the Machine's The Battle for Los Angeles. And actually, also, I have a quip. This quote right here is from a different Rage Against the Machine song that's like featured on a different album. But hey, we're not really going for accuracy here. No fealty to the fecal felon, no king. Definitely a hand drawn there. No kings. History has its eyes on you. I'm pretty certain that is a Hamilton reference. Speak truth to power. No human being is illegal. I mean, there's a lot of fun signs that people both made and they had inspiration for. I am here because of immigrants who had no papers. Deport the racists. You know, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of signs that are going to be from people who are directly talking about the main issues that motivated them to come out and protest. So as I said, again, when we have ICE doing very aggressive tactics, right, that's what probably a lot of these people who are holding this specific sign, or maybe IC, or like here we see in the background, like ICT loves immigrants. ICT, if you don't know, you're not from Wichita, this is our airport code, and it's kind of like how LAX is kind of a shorthand for Los Angeles. ICT is a shorthand for Wichita. People who are holding these signs are doing so because they actively believe in these issues, right? This is a dartboard, so I think you can kind of see some of the darts that you could take out and put right back in. This guy was just kind of walking around, just letting people go and, I guess, pin the tail or whatever it is on the president. Also, I got to say this, they gave him such a gigantic nose, like just a big old honker. You know what I'm saying? The next one, I think this is kind of another one. Again, I got to say, I love that American flag. It's just so beautiful every single time there's a good photo of it taken. Just top 3 flags in world history, period. Where do I start? Resist, persist, repeat. Now, I'd like to give some recognition to the photographers in the community. All credit is given to where credit is due.
She runs from the Flint Hills to the Badlands. My wonderful, lovely lady Kansas. She brings me peace, serenity. Oh, my lovely lady Kansas. It's good old Kansas, from Wichita to Kansas City, Colorado to Missouri, the fields of golden grain. Sunset on the keeper of the plains, oh, the earthy sweet before the rain. All within her earthly reign. I see the buffalo in the distance, hear the meadowlark's hymn, sunflowers in Sumner County. All of this 'cause my lady Kansas. It's good old Kansas, from Wichita to Kansas City, Colorado to Missouri, the fields of golden grain. Sunset on the keeper of the plains, oh, the earthy sweet before the rain. All within her earthly reign. You can see God's work through the land, as if he painted each blade of grass by hand. Every smile, every tear, oh, how I wish to be nowhere but here. It's good old Kansas, from Wichita to Kansas City, Colorado to Missouri, the fields of golden grain. Sunset on the keeper of the plains, oh, the earthy sweet before the rain. All within her earthly reign.
Another thing I want to address in this video is a Wichita Eagle opinion piece, or really I should say a hit piece that was put out by the local newspaper in regards to the event. The specific article is called "Latte Drinking, Tofu Eating, Radical Leftists Melt Down at No Kings Protest." So his main points that I want to address today from his article is that, one, he calls the protest an intellectual meltdown and a full-blown temper tantrum. Two, a protest against a tyrannical king wouldn't look like people waving signs, drinking $8 soy lattes, eating tofu burgers, wearing mass-produced Che Guevara t-shirts. Three, the only marker of true authoritarianism would be that the protesters must be getting disappeared after the protest to never be seen again. Four, claims the left is the real authoritarians by censoring conservatives, gives no examples for me to rebut. 5. Kamala's nomination was actually a real coup that the Democrats supported. 6. He pulls the unelected bureaucrats, media elite, and agitators who think they know better than us line. 7. The Mexican and Palestinian flags are being waved at these protests instead of the U.S. flag. Point 1. Understandably, you can disagree with someone and their ideas, but to denigrate your political opponent as having an intellectual meltdown for exercising their First Amendment right is another position altogether. Painting them as having a full-blown temper tantrum is politically lazy and works more as a character attack than an argument against their ideas. Point 2. I just spent the last 10 minutes showing you guys the countless photos that I and other photographers took of the protest. Almost none of the items he listed are present at the protest. Mind you, the protest was at the foot of the door of one of the nearby Starbuckses. So it's not like it's difficult to get one. It's just that this author wanted to make another lazy character attack. Point 3. Using the logic of disappearing protesters as a hallmark of authoritarian regimes, the protests against ICE are justified, especially seeing as they are the agency that actively has thousands of agents on the ground publicly snatching people, where their families will go days, if not weeks, before seeing them, is a solid example of the author's specifications for an authoritarian regime, yet the author himself doesn't even realize it. Point 4. the author just doesn't give any examples for me to rebut. So maybe it's just fluff, and it just doesn't really add anything to the actual argument. I mean, maybe he's paid by the word to write this or something. Maybe he like needs some extra spending money because he wants to go to like Trans-Siberian Orchestra this winter when they come in. Point 5. The author says this in the hopes that the reader doesn't understand how political primaries work. Political primaries aren't direct elections. Like the Electoral College, political primaries have elections where primary voters elect electors that actually do the voting at each convention. So, frankly, it's perfectly fine if the Democrats replaced Biden with Kamala. Point 6. I just kind of hate this line. I mean, it's just overused by everyone, Republicans and Democrats and conspiracy theorists all around. I mean, for the author who's a Republican, here are a bunch of Republican media elite and unelected bureaucrats and agitators that, oh, wait, hold on. Actually, I don't know of any right-wing agitators. He actually got me there. Gosh, oh my gosh, I definitely can't think of any right-wing political agitators. Definitely not violent ones. Nope. Point 7. Yes, Mexican and Palestinian flags were being waved. But guess what? There were far more American flags being waved than any other type of flag at this protest. Furthermore, the only thing the author is really trying to do with this statement is convince the reader that the people protesting are not Americans, or that these protesters don't have America's best interest at heart. This is just flat out an attack on your fellow American. It is disrespectful and shamefully un-American. This hit piece is the view of one man, a very biased man, but it's the view of one man. I mean, it also might actually be the view of one of the editors of the Wichita Eagle. But that being said, it's still an opinion piece. Like, it's just a very badly written opinion piece, and I think me going down and taking down these points hopefully has illustrated that for you guys. All right, so just kind of give us some final thoughts here. If you hate protests, quit hating, quit whining about this. Like, especially if you're nowhere near the area. It's just dumb complaining. Seriously, stop it, man. I mean, and then also, if you're like driving through it and you're being inconvenienced by 2 minutes, like, is that such a good reason that you're being inconvenienced by 2 minutes that you now feel justified to hate another human being? It's just such a stupid, childish, and dumb attitude. For the protesters that were out there every Saturday, go vote for the Democratic Party, for the Democrats here in Wichita. Where the were you? Like, I'd imagine you should have over a dozen political operatives handing out like leaflets on like party meetings, like how to sign up to the Democrats, how to register people to vote. But like, you guys aren't out there, and yet this is easily a slam dunk for you guys. For the Libertarian Party, same thing. Literally, why weren't you out there? It's such an easy slam dunk for you guys. Same reasoning. Libertarians, go out there. We're like, if you look at the data, Kansas is also one of the highest libertarian states. All right, so I know that was a little negative here at the end, but I just wanted to kind of wrap it up with some of my final thoughts. So if you're watching, make sure to subscribe and let me know what other Wichita area stuff I should document and what other cool things you would like to see. I've been your host, CJ. This has been the ICT Metroist. Thank you for suffering through this, and thank you for watching.
We'll resist the oligarchs and always work for justice. Super colors, flagellant racists.